gonna try that again. Good morning. Yes, all right. Welcome to this year's Black History Month Assembly. I'm Haley, I'm a senior.
I'm Elise, I'm a freshman.
I'm Dee Dee, I'm a freshman.
I'm Mari, I'm a junior.
I'm Jasmine, I'm a junior.
I'm Christian, most people call me Blaze. I'm a freshman.
I'm Micah, I'm a sophomore.
I'm Chandler Cersei, I'm a senior. Shout out all my seniors.
I'm Campbell Cersei and I'm a sophomore.
I'm Corey, I'm a senior.
I'm Nyla, I'm a senior. Today's assembly honors Black History Month, a time to pause and reflect on the experiences and contributions of African Americans and our own personal relations to these stories. Get out. Storytelling is an important part of helping people understand and relate to one another. Stories on film are particularly important as they not only leave lasting images in our minds, they also help shape those images and ideas we have about others. Positive or negative, they last a lifetime.
Hollywood became the place for storytelling, a larger-than-life epicenter for bringing stories to screen. African American contributions to the film industry have been immeasurable. While being excluded and exploited in the process, they found ways to participate, innovate, and shine, despite the many obstacles that existed then and now.
Born in 1884, Oscar Micheaux is considered a trailblazer in the film industry. Shunned by the Hollywood studios, Micheaux wrote, produced, directed, and distributed his own works known as race films, movies made for Black audiences featuring Black casts. Given the times, his accomplishments in publishing and production are extraordinary, including being the first African American to produce a film to be shown in white movie theaters.
Film historian Donald Bogle, currently teaching at NYU, is considered one of the earliest writers naming and analyzing the early Hollywood stereotypes of African Americans. Originally published in 1973, Bogle explores the 5 main stereotypes of African Americans in film. These roles, for a significant amount of time, were the only ones available to Black actors and actresses.
These harmful caricatures were the Tom, a happily submissive and loyal servant; the Coon, depicted as lazy, easily frightened, childlike, simple-minded, and cowardly; the Mulatto, typically light-skinned woman portrayed as a tragic damsel in distress; the Mammy, the large, dark-skinned African-American woman, happy and loyal slave; the Buck, the irrational, often violent, and hypersexual male. Bogle's book has been republished and updated to include modern filmmaking, such as John Singleton and Ava DuVernay, as well as actors such as Lupita Nyong'o and Octavia Spencer.
Mostly during the very early years, the movies were a parade of embarrassing, insulting, demanding caricatures, often offsprings of the rigid stereotypes of the minstrel so popular in the 19th century. In it, he talks about the ways representation of Black Americans in movies has changed, and the many ways it has remained the same.
Here are some viewpoints that our own Westminster faculty have on representation in film today.
It's the beginning of film, thinking about C.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. I think we've had leaps and bounds of African-American representation in film in Hollywood. Leaps and bounds.
You know, obviously in the 80s, the Cosby Show, like I know Cosby has a lot of like baggage attached to his name, but man, that show was like middle-class Black people, like, yes, like that's an experience that I think America generally, you know, didn't necessarily have, and that was powerful.
I would say Soldier Story starring Denzel Washington and Howard Rollins from the early 90s or late 80s is when that film came out. It's an August Wilson play that was adapted into film. Amazing story. Takes place in World War II.
I've seen a lot of black stand-up comics talk about like black films and do a pretty good job of saying that, you know, the menu of things that were available to black directors were always like civil rights based movies. These are not to say that those stories can't be told, but to be always shuffled in one direction and not be able to talk about like a varied experience, and to be able to see like, you know, a horror film directed by a black director, or to see like, you know, a musical directed by a black director really limits like what I think black actors and directors, you know, can see and do. And so I think, you know, culture has, in some cases, pigeonholed the black experience. I do see some cracks in that, but I do think that there's a long way to go in terms of like hearing diverse black voices in cinema, and in pop culture. Like, you know, I'm a little
One of the most demeaning stereotypes, which surfaced in the 1800s, was a Jim Crow clownish figure. The name eventually came to define the segregationist era in American history. The phrase Jim Crow has often been attributed to Jump Jim Crow, a song and dance caricature of black people performed by a white actor, Thomas D. Rice, in blackface. It surfaced in 1832 and developed into an entertainment genre known as minstrelsy.
Minstrel shows, popular during the 19th and 20th century, were comic skits depicting black people in a negative light to perpetrate harmful stereotypes and justify inhumane treatment.
Shockingly, white actors weren't the only ones performing in these minstrel shows. Some featured black actors who took them on to make a living. Here's a short portion of the 1935 film, Harmony Lane.
Well, Mr. Bones, how are you this evening?
Me? Oh, boy. I'm the personification of health, Mr. Christie.
Good. Who was that lady I saw you with this afternoon?
That was no lady. That was my wife.
Produced by filmmaker D.W. Griffith, the 1915 silent film, The Birth of a Nation, was praised for its skillful innovation and criticized for the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan membership. For some, these caricatures may seem like harmless entertainment, but for many, it incites and rationalizes violence. Here's a short clip from the film, The Birth of a Nation.
As Professor Leonard writes, these caricatures created false ideas about who people were and how they behaved.
The mammy stereotype was another common character role on screen. Black enslaved women were forced into caretaking roles, cooking, cleaning, and raising white children.
Famous examples of actors in similar roles include Calpurnia in To Kill a Mockingbird, Aunt Chloe in Uncle Tom's Cabin, and Hattie McDaniel as Mammy in Gone with the Wind. This film, a Civil War epic, romanticized slavery and helped perpetuate the narrative.
Grant us pardon, absolution, and remission of our sins. Amen.
Ooh! Just hold on and suck in.
Mammy, here's Miss Scarlett's victuals. You can take that all back to the kitchen. I won't need to buy it.
Oh, yes, you is. You's going to eat every mouthful of this.
I'm not. So put on the dress, because we're late already.
What my lamb going to wear?
That?
No, you ain't. You can't show your bosom for 3 o'clock. I'm going to speak to your mom about you.
If you say one word to Mother, I won't need to buy it.
McDaniel went on to win the Oscar for her performance in the film, the first African American to win the prize for a Best Supporting Role. The 12th Academy Awards ceremony was held in a hotel with a strict no blacks policy. It is said that the film producer had to call in a special favor just to have McDaniels allowed into the building. She was also not allowed to sit with the other nominees.
While less prevalent today, the mammy archetype and its influences remain in portrayals on screen, including Black women characters whose primary roles are to selflessly nurture and be the supportive friends to the white protagonists. Examples include Mercedes Jones from Glee and Ivy Wentz from Good Luck Charlie.
Since Oscar Micheaux, many directors and film writers have pushed past these stereotypes to create multidimensional characters with a wider variety of stories.
Examples of screenwriters and directors aiming to tell these stories are Ryan Coogler, Lena Waithe, and Radha Blank.
Ava Duvernay, a former Hollywood public relations person, says she decided to give filmmaking a try while hanging around on the set of one of her clients 10 years ago. She made her first film for $6,000 and has gone on to become the first Black woman director to have a film nominated for the Academy Awards Best Picture category.
I'm Black, I am a woman, I am a filmmaker. I'm Ava Duvernay. When I was a kid, I can't tell you any shows on television that I actually related to. Cosby Show was a show that I saw people who were the same hue as me. But my father wasn't a doctor, my mother wasn't a lawyer. The last 10 years is when I've seen more representations that feel like folks in my real life behaving in a way that feels familiar to me. I think there are a lot of things that are going to inspire the next generation. It's not only the representations that they will see, it's that the traditional walls have collapsed. It's that everyone actually has a camera in their phone. It's that we're all making mini movies when we upload to IG stories. It's that we're all learning how to express ourselves, and not just express yourself. Now you can upload that movie to YouTube or some other platform and share it with folks. And that means that we don't need some old men pulling puppet strings to tell us you can or can't do this. Now you can make your thing, you can share your thing. I love that 13th has stirred so much conversation. Almost a year later, everyone's entering in from their own place. That's the beauty of art and activism. It allows us to have a common entry point. We're all going to enter in through this work. And from there we can have a conversation and maybe even take some action. And that is a new world. And that is a world that we all can share in. What we're seeing now that's so beautiful in this new renaissance of television and film is a centering of folks who have so often been in the margins. So I feel blessed and fortunate and grateful that I can be making work during this time. And I look forward to what comes next from everyone that's coming up in the next generation.
Actor, comedian, writer, director, and producer Jordan Peele is another Hollywood trailblazer. He not only creates and directs dynamic and multi-dimensional Black characters, he tells complex stories through films like Get Out and Us.
Get Out was Peele's first Hollywood film, made for $4.5 million, grossing more than $255 million. It won the Oscar that year for Best Original Screenplay. He describes his idea of the sunken place this way: no matter how hard we scream, the system silences us. It was his way of commenting on the lack of black representation in film and the horror genre specifically, where he says black characters are often the first to be murdered.
Things are changing. In 2018, Netflix developed a new initiative called Strong Black Leads to address this issue, as you've seen.
What's up? I never yielded. And as you can see, I am not dead.
Representation matters.
Get out! Yo, chill, man. Get out!
We hear it all the time, but what does it really mean or look like? In an ad campaign, Netflix says when it comes to black leading actors, directors, writers, and producers, they are representing. And it's not a moment, it's a movement. Famous directors Ava DuVernay and Spike Lee helped introduce the streaming services initiative called Strong Black Lead.
We're not a genre because there's no one way to be black.
It's a promise to represent black audiences authentically, which hasn't always been Hollywood's priority.
Mommy, here's Miss Scarlett's pickles. You can take that all back to the kitchen. I won't need to buy it.
Oh, yes, you is. You's going to eat every mouthful of this.
Early pictures of black people in entertainment included criminals, slaves, nannies, servants, blackface, or just plain ignorance. But from the mid-1910s to the 1930s, Duke University says some film companies had a sort of revelation, if you will. They dedicated themselves to creating productions with, quote, all-colored casts. They promised to write positive, diverse roles. After many black people moved from the South to urban areas, Hollywood seemed to be adjusting to the country's changes. In fact, what was called the race movie genre only displayed black people in a positive light. But eventually, the idea of black people in those roles was no longer marketable. Duke says an all-black production company failed because of the lack of commercial appeal to broader, AKA white, audiences.
There are a lot of people who live in your neighborhood who choose not to get on that bus. What do they choose to do? They choose to go out and sell drugs. They choose to go out and kill people. They choose to do a lot of other things, but they choose not to get on that bus.
Commercial appeal like the infamous white savior complex. Teen Vogue defining it as movies that promote colonialism in a sense, because people of color need white people to save them. They called it Oscar bait, which brings me to my next point.
But I think it sucks that if black people want Academy Awards, we can't just make movies about anything but slavery.
No. We can make any movie we want. We just have to trick white people into thinking the movie is about slavery.
Cue the hashtag #OscarSoWhite in 2016. For the second year in a row, USA Today reported all 20 actors nominated for a lead or supporting acting Oscar, they were white. And black actors weren't having it.
We no longer need to ask to be invited anywhere.
Some boycotted the award show and demanded change. The Academy promised to diversify in race and gender by 2020. We can't talk about representation without taking a trip to Wakanda. Black Panther was proof diversity sells. Forbes said it made $700 million nationally, more than $1 billion worldwide. It seems Black Hollywood is hopeful Netflix can represent for Black people alongside other big dogs in the industry working to do the same. So let's hope this trend can and will eventually turn into a way of life.
Let everybody know, and suckers be warned, that this is the outcome when you mess with bullhorn.
I wanted to make something that has a perspective that you don't often see, but I also wanted it to be an inclusive movie. That's the power of story and genre. Jordan Peele.
Thank you for your attention today. Big thanks to Judy Osborne, Dina Scott, Michael Reese, and Sarah Beth Fleming. Another special thanks to our IT, tech, advisors, and all of you.
If you'd like to talk more about film and representation, we are planning a discussion opportunity during club time in the coming weeks.
Also, there's a Mac and Wack concert today after school, so make sure y'all go some support. You are now dismissed.